The new ZV-E1. It's this new powerhouse vlogging camera. It's like the baby version of an FX3. It's widely known that it's a vlogging camera, but I also think it could be great for other things, and that's what we're gonna get into today. Each point I make, I kind of have the good of that and the bad of that. So it's more of like an open conversation, but I want to give you guys just a different perspective that I'm not hearing right now. So let's get into it. I think Sony did a great job on this little beast of a camera, making it capable of amazing things. It's obviously made for vlogging and shorter form content creation. Aside from that obvious target market, I think this would be a great camera for real estate, which I do a lot of with my FX3. So honestly, this is the main reason I kind of I started researching this camera, because I'm like, super small body, has the same video features as the FX3 and the A7S III, where it can shoot like 4K 60, 4K 24. I'm like, what's the catch? You know, it doesn't have a fan or anything. Now, as a wedding filmmaker, this is a deal breaker for me. Depending on where you live, weddings can be super unpredictable when it comes to weather conditions, and the money you'd save buying this body over a more reliable FX3 or FX30 that has a built-in fan is just not worth the headache or risk for me. Don't like when cameras have weird shortcomings like that. I shoot weddings, it's unpredictable. I need the camera just to be reliable, and for me, the money I'm gonna save if it just shut off and I lost footage, it's not worth it. This camera, in my mind, that's kind of the reason why I don't think it's a great wedding videography camera, but I think that this is still a good camera for other things, and that's what I'll go into in a second. The smaller form factor will make it harder to not overheat, because the heat needs to go somewhere. You know, with the FX3, it has a built-in fan, so they are smaller bodies, they don't have a fan built in, so you do run the risk where you're gonna have heat issues. The ZV-E1 shares the same sensor as the FX3, which makes it a great camera to pair with the FX3 or A7S III. It records up to 4K 60 at the moment with no crop, just like the FX3 and the A7S III. The only limitation would be how long you can record, which would be dependent on where you are, being inside or outside like we spoke about, and how hot it is. With the camera on a tripod with the screen door out, you should get more than about 30 minutes to 2 hours at 4K 24, which is sufficient enough at a standard wedding. 4K 60 is said to be around 40 minutes to 100 an hour and 20 minutes, and depending on the temperature. So another great ability is the base ISO of this camera, either 640 or 800, and the other base ISO is 12,800, which essentially makes it just as powerful in low light conditions as the FX3 and A7S III. One more feature that piqued my interest was the ability to live stream at 4K 30. If you're doing more than like a 30-minute ceremony, I think it would just be safer to record in 1080 at 60. That's still great picture quality for streaming, and you're just gonna get way more record time if you're live streaming a wedding and you can't go over to check the camera. And I mean, if you're charging for live streaming, why would you want to run the risk of it overheating and just shutting off? 4K 30, nice feature. Maybe if you're in a more controlled environment, but I would say for a wedding, I would just stick to 1080. Clear image zoom is pretty much on steroids, and so is the autofocus in this camera. So one great feature that was mentioned on the EZ1 is the ability to still be able to use the autofocus functions with clear image zoom. So to give you some contrast, with the FX3, you lose the ability to do autofocus once you enter that clear image zoom function, and it'll essentially just switch to manual focus. Personally, I use manual focus regardless, so this is not something that bothers me, but I know many people love autofocus. And speaking of autofocus, you get the new AI technology that is able to recognize people, animals, cars, and like other objects. So the zoom rocker, whoop, I got this upside down. So great addition to the EZ1 is the zoom rocker. So the zoom rocker on the FX3 is single-handedly my favorite feature on this camera that kind of separates it from the other guys. This has been added to the EZ1, and I believe it's one of the better features on these newer Sony bodies. When I'm at a wedding, being able to punch in a bit more without losing noticeable quality makes all my lenses more diverse and adds a different spin on them. So you can zoom like normally with the lens, but then you have the option to kind of zoom in a bit further than that. If you had a 24 to 105, then it could become like a 24 to 130. But essentially you get this extra reach and you're not losing quality, which is a big deal. And this is not to be confused with digital zoom. You will lose quality there. Clear image zoom is like you get that extra zoom, but you're not losing quality. Normally you can't zoom with the prime, but I use my 35mm and it kind of acts as like a 35 to 50 for me, 1.4. Sometimes it could be the difference between you getting a shot or losing a shot. So having that extra range is super beneficial, and just having that feature on the new EZ1 and it just being such a compact body, honestly super underrated. So especially at a wedding, having that extra zoom capability with clear image zoom, and then also you get that autofocus, which autofocus is beneficial definitely if you're shooting weddings. And if you can get that beautiful autofocus and clear image zoom, why would you not want that? It's amazing. Sony's newer cameras got introduced with like way better image stabilization. So they have standard stabilization and then they have active. With active stabilization, you get a little bit of a crop. You could shoot handheld and it's awesome. And the EZ kind of adds on to this. So the EZ has something called dynamic stabilization. You're just getting better stabilization. Almost looks like a gimbal. Now, there's one thing I want to say about that. I feel like that stabilization is needed, and the reason being is because that camera body is super light and compact. With that being said, it is harder if you shoot handheld like me. It is harder to keep a camera stable if it doesn't have a bit of weight to it. If that body's super light, how hard would it be to keep it stable if you're shooting handheld? My advice is to make the camera more balanced when it comes to weight distribution. Because the camera body is really light and you have a really heavy lens, then the camera is going to be very like top heavy. The weight distribution, not from just how it looks, but just how it feels, it's going to feel different if you have a camera body that's really light and then you have that lens that's really big. The only downside with dynamic stabilization is you do get a crop with that, a significant crop than the active stabilization. You may not want to have a crop like that. So especially if you're shooting something like say real estate, or if you're vlogging, obviously like you need it to be as wide as possible. You could counteract that with just having a wider lens, but that is something to think about. This camera paired with the new 16 to 35 GZ or EZ or whatever it's called. I think it would be great paired with the 16 to 35 f4. This lens is super light, and I think on that camera body, I would think it would be great where it's not too top heavy, and I feel like it would be very balanced on that camera body. I think that would make a good pair if you're trying to shoot real estate, if you're trying to do videos like that, or if you're trying to do real estate. I feel like you could put that on the newest RS3C, I think it's called. It's the compact version of the new RS3. That is super small and light and compact, and that body mixed with this lens, that whole combo right there is just super light. And if you're doing real estate, having that light setup would just be so nice and less intrusive, less intimidating. Another lens to consider on the EZ1 is the 20 to 70 f4. I don't know if you could use that for real estate, but if you're vlogging, this would definitely be a super versatile lens. Also, that 20 to 70 would almost, with clear image zoom, would almost act like a 20 to 90 or 100. With the EVF gone on the top and the light compact build, it would balance very nicely on the new Ronin RSC. That combo in my head just sounds like a dream if you do a lot of real estate. Tally lights came on the FX3. Now it's gonna be hard to see just because I have a camera cage on my camera, but normally there's a tally light on the front, there's a tally light right here on the camera, so you have two tally lights, and then you also have one on the back. It essentially is just a little red dot on the camera to let you know it's recording, and then you also have one on the button here. The E1 has one built where it's on the front of the camera, so if you're shooting really far away and you're shooting a wedding and you have a camera off in the distance that's like your B cam, you can kind of see from far away. Honestly speaking, like, I thought the tally lights would be easier to see. I feel like if you're inside, you can really see it, but I feel like once you're outside and it's bright outside, I find it very hard to tell, but the back one is pretty good. So another thing I want to talk about is the SD card slots. So the FX3 has a dual SD card slot system. It's SD, standard SD, UHS-2, and then also you can do CF Express. I don't use CF Express, but you have the option if you want to. Having the flexibility to be able to dual record, you know, something I'm filming, record twice. If one clip happened to be corrupted or one memory card failed, then you have it recording to something else. With the E1, you can only have one SD card slot in. And for me, that's another deal breaker when it comes to weddings. If you lose footage and you have to go and refund a bride money because you lost footage, wouldn't you rather just put that money towards a camera that would be more reliable? And that's where my head mindset was at. That's why I invested the money I did into the FX3. So the cool thing is that the EZ1 actually shares the same battery as the A7 IV, the FX3, and the A7S series batteries. I don't know if you know, but like they're easily like 100 to 150 bucks. You gotta buy like 5 of those, starts to add up. So it's nice that the FZ100 battery does work in that little camera body. I think the ZV E1 is a great camera. I don't think it's for everybody, and I think it's for a very specific market. I think if you're shooting events, weddings, I don't think it's the camera for you. I just think for reliability and just from a more practical standpoint, I would go with the FX30 or the FX3 if you're gonna be shooting weddings. I wanted to make a review that didn't feel like I'm just throwing specs at you. There's a lot of great reviews out there that are gonna talk about that. But as a wedding filmmaker, I don't think this camera makes sense. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is this a camera you're thinking about getting? Have I swayed your opinion? Do you hate my soul? Like, let me know what's up. Anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Peace. This is Damien. Take care.